you did say the world has got many problems, and you
Yes.
mentioned some major ones. But perhaps a very major one is, the geopolitical problems that we have around the world, and particularly in the Middle East right now, that is rendered rather more explosive because somehow it is also along religious lines. Perhaps if you were to apply the Buddhist approach, what do you think is really the situation in the Middle East, and what do you think should really be the solution? And how do we as Buddhists, maybe help define what global responsibility is, because I don't think it is interfering into other people's affairs and destabilizing what is already a very unstable situation. It could have, as you mentioned earlier on, unintended consequences. And someone did predict eons ago, that the Third World War may start from the Middle East. Thank you.
Well, of course, I have no really good answer, but the nation group is made up of about 1.6 billion people. They produce 4% of the world's economy. They have only 20% of the productivity of the world's average. So if we want to know what's going on in Egypt, what is really the case is that you have this explosive mixture of young and poor. And it's an explosive mixture. And it's not only young and poor, it's young and, in some cases, feeling of hopeless. Because of oil, we think, well, these people have all the money in the world. But when you look at the Islamic world, it is underproducing. It is one of the poverty-stricken, that Islamic nation group is a economically very poor zone of the world. So we understand that part of what we're looking at is not just religious, it's physical, it's a real thing. So looking at that and knowing it is what you could say is quite right. You cannot just go in and say, I'm superior to you, I know better than you, I know how to solve your problem. Can't do that. No, it never really works. It's very destructive in so many ways. So many ways. On the other hand, I would say to anybody in the world that one thing which often works best is to give hope. And one of the ways in which you give hope is that you help people help themselves. And all those young people in that part of the world, they need help. They need hope. They really need it. And that's not just giving them nothing. That requires a lot of wisdom to be able to give that kind of hope to people. Some years ago, they built the Alexandria Library in Alexandria to re-put back the library that was burned by the Romans, which at the time was the largest library in the world. So they asked a group of us from around the world to come there and spend 4 days and help them decide how to build their library. And if I did a certain thing, which I think is being what I'm talking about in terms of this. I first said to them, which I believe is very true, you will never be the largest library in the world again. Forget it. You're never going to do it. You're never going to be able to accumulate 28 million, 30 million books to equal the Library of Congress and the Bibliothèque Nationale and the British Library, the National Library of China. Forget it. You're not going to do that. You must find a way to express what you can do best, which is, and finally they made the decision, to build a digital collection of Arabic literature and to be the best collection of Arabic literature in the world in digital form. That's giving people hope. That's giving them something that you can give them some help with. That gives them their, I hope, their self-worth. We're doing something that's really good. We are not just trying desperately to imitate the Library of Congress, which you can't do. There are not enough books for sale in the world these days to do it. You couldn't do it. And if you did, who would use it? It would be worthless practically. So that's what we have to constantly be asking ourselves. When I go into a situation and I look at what they've got, how can I make myself focus in on what's really the case? And sometimes what I have to say to people is not going to be happy for them. They really didn't want to hear, you're never going to be the largest library in the world again. Not in the sense of having that many books. So you have to find a way to be what you can best be. And I think that that's where we need to try to help people in all of these countries to understand what it is that they can best be without giving them false assurances or telling them to do something which they're never going to be able to do, and then they're going to be failures. You don't want to set them up for failure. You absolutely don't want to do that. You must try to set people up by recognizing what their value is and what their strengths are and telling them, go with your strength. You go with your strength, you'll do much better. That's something I have always tried to do with educating students. The main thing which a teacher has to do is to be able to spot in the student and help them understand what is your strength. And a lot of people reject their strength. The strength that they have, they don't prize. They throw it away. They throw away their strength and force themselves to do something which they are secondary at and will never be very good at. And it's a very sad thing. So it means recognizing what is really the case. That's hard and sometimes almost devastating. But if you do it and it's right, it feels very pure. There's a purity to it. This is what the case is. And now I have something to move from.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you again, Professor Lancaster, and everyone have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.